Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Gem and Friends. It's your boy Gem Mint. I'm here with the one and only Sarah Daly, aka Comic Book Nerd Girl. What's going on, Sarah?
What's going on, guys? I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, did we use your video? Oh, there you go.
Oh,
Yeah, man. You there?
yeah. Can you hear me?
All right. Yeah, we're good. We're good. All right. So, what's going on with everybody in the chat? I see a lot of people popping up. What's up, George from Marvelous Collectibles Entertainment? I always forget this shit. Manimal. What's going on? Ed D, HME3 Comics, Steve Klein, Eddie Costa. We got a lot of people. Deadpoolica's in here. A lot of people starting to pile in. I think we got a good show lined up for today. What do you think?
I'm excited about it. I mean, I'm here, so.
So what happened? So I've been doing this YouTube thing, right? And then a lot of people that we deal with on an everyday basis. You know, I talk to Frank all the time. I talk to Dennis all the time.
Yeah.
For comics. And then I think I saw you like a post or something. I was like, oh shit, I know Sarah. Damn, Sarah's a grader at CBCS. And I was like, man, I had to ask you right away. I was just like, yo, what up?
Well, actually, you and I go way back. So way back before I was ever even a grader.
Right.
I was on IT, what?
Yeah.
2013, 14, something like that.
So that's what made me think like, damn, I should have been thought of this, because I know Sarah from when she was just getting books out the dollar bin, and now she's over here grading friggin', what do you call head? You were the head of vintage grading?
Oh, I wasn't the head. God no.
Oh yeah, no. You had something.
I was a vintage grader. Like we had modern graders, and then we had people that focus more on vintage because the defects are a little bit different. You know what I mean? They're more extensive.
Before we get into that, let's take it back. Let's take it back to 2013 or 2014. So we met on Instagram, and at the time, we had kind of already had this nice little comic book community on Instagram. I talk about it a lot on the channel. How did you find the comic book Instagram crew?
IG Comic Family, man. I joined Instagram in 2013, and I was just a nerd at the time. So I just, I didn't really know how to go about using an Instagram account. So I just posted all my comics. And people started, I met a lot of people on Instagram who had similar interests in comics, and, the hashtag IG Comic Family, that grew. Like there's, what, 100,000 posts under that now?
Yeah, it's a ton.
But, yeah, I mean, I just
shout out. So shout out to my man. It's Art, right? Storm Shadow is the one that created that hashtag.
Oh, IG Comic Fam. That's right.
So yeah, man. So that's funny because I had a regular Instagram. I always tell this story, and I would post a selfie, and it might get like 2 likes. If I post my kids, I might get like 10 likes. And that was back in the day when you got like an 11th like. It didn't say the names anymore. It said the number of likes. You remember that back then?
Yeah.
But then when I posted a comic book picture, that shit blew up like 100 likes. And I was like, oh, forget all these selfies. Let's post my comics, right? So that's kind of the same thing, right?
Yeah, I had no idea how many nerds were out there, especially on Instagram for some reason. I was like, oh, that's awesome.
Have you were you a part of any other like communities before the Instagram one? Like were you on Facebook before that, or?
I mean, I've had a Facebook since like high school, but I just used it for social stuff. I didn't use it for comics at all. Actually, I just used Instagram for comics. Yeah. I started buying and selling on there. And then eventually I branched out and I use Facebook for it now too. But no, I still stick to Instagram for the comic community.
That's home for sure.
So many people on there, good people too.
Before we keep going, so let me just hit a couple more people in the chat. What up, Emperor Collector? What up, DLR? Toy Box Manny saying, hey, Gemini family. What up, brother? Nuke's Comic Shop. What up, Spider-Man, Vibranium Jim? What up, Ariel? Johnny Dakota. So you don't see the chat, right, Sarah?
No, because I'm stupid and I don't know how to use computers.
Well, we got 64 watching right now. We got my man, Taylor Alexander Cassidy, holding down the moderating on the chat until his phone dies. But so Sarah, so we talked about the early days on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
And during that time, what were you mostly collecting?
Fantastic Four. That was my first run that I went after. I mean, because I started like reading comics when I was about 10 or 11, and because my dad used to go to gun shows all the time, so he would take me with him. And one time, one gun show dealer had a box of comics, and I was like, all about the beef jerky at those shows. I was finally like, all right, let me dig through here. Let me see what's up. So I bought my first comic at a gun show when I was like 10.
Was it Fantastic Four?
No, it was actually Superman.
Mm.
It was Superman 596. I believe it was the Twin Towers issue. It like went on sale. It was kind of quote unquote controversial because it showed the Twin Towers being blown up, and it like made it to stands like a week before 9/11.
Oh wow!
So, yeah, it was a bit of a controversial issue, but I remember I picked that one up. I had no idea, and I mean, that was it. It was done. That was my habit from then on. And I went to like Toys R Us. Toys R Us used to sell comics in like the big old 50 packs. You guys
remember that? Yo, I remember getting like the Maximum Clonage Spider-Man comics where they had like the foil shiny covers in one of those packs, man. Those packs were dope.
Yeah, no, I used to buy them all the time. And that's actually how my collection started. And then eventually I kind of, started reading characters, and I was like, okay, I like Marvel a little bit better than DC. And I really loved the Silver Age. And I loved Fantastic Four.
Yeah, that's funny because you gravitated towards them older books, man. I remember when you used to collect them FFs.
Oh yeah. And it's funny too because like I was a kid, so I didn't realize that people had been printing comics for 70 years. And so when I realized that like there was a whole collection of back issues out there of these incredible characters, I was like, I want to get the oldest books, the oldest, moldiest. Like I just thought that was the coolest thing to get, like an old beat up book and just be like, dude, I have this. This is 50-year-old comic and it's still intact. And I just thought it was the neatest thing.
See, yeah, I got into comics like as a kid too, and Superman, like Death of Superman, like around that time. But I remember thinking any old comic book was like $1 million. Like there's no way. Don't even think of it. I remember one time my pops bought me this Richie Rich comic, and it was like $60, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is so crazy!" But I think that's why when we get older, we start hunting those books down for real, and it's like it's not impossible to get them. You know what I mean?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Because my mom I found out when I started collecting that my mom used to collect, and she had a couple Neil Adams Batmans, which were pretty cool. She like blacked out Batman's teeth on the cover and everything. And then she had a bunch of like Dennis the Menace, but she kept them in Ziploc bags because they didn't have bags and boards back then. They didn't really these were collectibles. So I pulled them down from the attic, and I was like, these are worth $1 million. We can just retire now.
Exactly.
But I thought it was cool, So
hey, real quick, let me shout out my man Truman in the chat, one of the mods. I know he was in a car accident recently, man. Glad to see you're back and back to work. Now, enough slacking off. Anyway, so what up, Dylan? All right. Cynthia's in the chat. Anyway, Sarah, so that's how it started, right? You started as a kid, right, on Instagram. Around that time, you're getting Fantastic Four issues. And I remember, actually, now that I think about it, you didn't even mess with graded books at all when you first jumped on the scene.
I didn't.
Weren't you at first kind of like, what's the point? Like, I remember something like that.
Oh, yeah. No, I didn't believe in it. Like, I was like, you can't read them. So why? that was my logic.
How do you go from not messing with them to working for them?
It's funny. Well, it's a long story.
We'll get there. We got time.
Yeah. Like at first I was like, why would you encapsulate a book? And this is when I was just reading for the love of reading. I wasn't really, and I was still collecting, but I wasn't really big into the, I wasn't buying $10,000 books. I wasn't buying like, these really, really classic items that, should be encapsulated and preserved. Right. So it didn't wrap around my head at the time. And I didn't realize how much of a stock market is out there, like how big the comic industry truly was at the time. I didn't grasp that. And I was like totally against grading.
And the grading companies really helped establish that with those price points on the grades and and the GPAs and Comics MV. Real quick, shout out to Iman in the chat. What's going on, Iman? Yeah, man. So that's funny. So you weren't really with it, and then I noticed you starting like getting a little bit into it, with the graded books.
I picked up, a couple graded books. Well, the first book I picked up was The Strange Tales. It was an early pre-hero issue, and it was signed by Stan. And it was a really low grade issue. It was like a 1.8. And the reason I got it is because it was signed and it was encapsulated, and it was the first time that I had like that was my first book, my graded book. I was like, I didn't know anything about grading,
Mhm.
really, you know what I mean? Further than the encapsulation process and things like that. So I kind of fell in love with them for a while there.
I feel like one of your earlier books that came from me. I feel like I don't know if that's true or not.
That is true. I believe it was
it Electra, the first Electra?
Daredevil 168. It was
Yeah, exactly.
The 9-4.
I remember that because that's kind of when I first started doing raffles, and it was at the time when I was still chopping up names on a piece of paper and putting them in a hat or a bag or whatever.
Names in a hat.
But
names in a bag.
Names in a bag. Some people still tell me that, man, you got to take it back to names in a bag. But you know what's funny? What's funny about that, I'll never forget. Like, I was still trying to sell books at the time because I was still getting raw books, getting them pressed, getting them graded. So I put it up for sale, and it wasn't moving. And you were like, you know what to do. And then I was like, fuck it, let's try to do the raffle. And then you actually won it. I was like, oh, that's crazy how you called it or whatever.
Yeah, no, I think because I was the one who told you to put it up because I wanted the book.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to pay full price for it. So I was just like, hey, I'll throw in a couple bucks and see what happens. And you're right, actually. I realized that was the first graded book that was in my collection. I technically didn't consider myself buying it. So I felt like I was like, oh, this is awesome. It's a raffle. But that was my first graded book in my collection. Yeah. So that was dope.
That's fine. You're in Florida right now, right?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Born and raised.
I was in South Florida. I think you're on what are you in Pensacola or some island or something, right?
No, I'm in Tampa. I used to live on Davis Island, which is like down near downtown.
Cool. So let's fast forward a little bit, right? So we're on Instagram. The thing's getting bigger, and I think what's interesting about it, like during the time from like 2013 moving forward, the movies started getting bigger. You know, the community started getting bigger. Books started going for crazy prices. Everybody was slabbing books, and it was a cool time. I mean, it's still pretty much like that right now. I mean, the bubble hasn't bursted yet, right?
Oh, not at all. I feel like if anything, it's going up. It's still out there, especially with the Marvel Universe and the DC Universe, the movies, and the TV shows. Because we didn't really have we had like the cartoons.
What was the first TV show, man? It wasn't the Marvel Netflix stuff, right? And I'm talking about, like, you know how Iron Man was like the first of like the new wave of superhero movies. Definitely. The TV shows had to be like, it wasn't Arrow, was it?
It might have been. It was there was a couple out there for a while. Smallville. I feel like that.
That's like pre the bubble.
Right.
But anyway, now we're getting a little oversaturated though, man. I'm kind of like bah humbug to all the shows. I'm like, oh, now this guy's getting a show, that guy's getting a show. I don't give a damn. I don't watch that many shows, you know?
It's funny too, because I expected that with all the Netflix movie or the Netflix shows and everything like that. You know, the prices of first appearances skyrocket with the, momentum of the movie or the show. That makes sense to me. What I never expected is the Golden Age books to skyrocket the way that they have.
But it makes sense. Those are the ones that are supposed to hold value. You know what I mean?
But they're like just ridiculous prices, and it is kind of a bah humbug moment because you're like, man, I'm glad that it's worth as much as it's worth. I'm glad there are collectors out there, but you're like, I'm never going to be able to afford a decent copy of that.
Shout out to Dolly. He said Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I think that was one of the big ones because it was like after the Avengers.
That's right.
So somebody saying, is that a Rock'em Sock'em Robot? Are they talking about something in my background or yours? Maybe they're talking about.
That's me. That's my Rock'em Sock'em.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. It's not the original one though. I need to get the original. I got it for my birthday, so somebody got it for me, and I was like, it's dope. My roommate and I used it to decide who was going to pay for dinner for like 6 months.
So during this time, right, then we started getting more books. Like I feel like me and you kind of both started Instagram kind of very humble, and the collection just over time, over buying and selling, and we just end up getting bigger and bigger.
Oh yeah. I had like no idea what I was doing at the beginning.
Yeah,
I didn't. I mean, I liked collecting, but I didn't realize there was a market or an industry out there for things like that. It was beyond my first point.
So then you got the job at Hero Havens Comics, right? Was that first? Or?
Yeah.
So was that your first comic shop?
Yes, it was. Yeah, it definitely was. At the time, before I got to Heroes Haven, I was working at a bagel shop, and I hated it. So I was like,
Sounds whack.
F this, man. I'm just gonna go sell some comics on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I did for like 6 months. I bought and sold comics pretty much 24/7. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna go actually get a job. I'm like, well, let me go get a job in comics. So I went and I applied at my local comic shop, Heroes Haven, and they hired me.
Were you already a customer there?
Yeah, I had been there. Like, I had been going there for years. Not as steadily because I was like, at that point in time, I was still collecting like Silver Age and back issues. So I wasn't really big on new subscriptions, stuff like that. And they didn't have a huge back issue section. So I had been there a couple times, but like I didn't frequent it too much. But I went in there because I was like, yeah, I want to help you guys. You know, I know a lot about Silver Age and stuff like that. So, you know, if you guys need help on that. And they did.
So this person must know the deal. Natua Fajita says Victor Creed and Big Pete.
Yeah.
Remember Victor Creed? What the hell happened to that guy?
That's terrifying.
Yeah, I've been talking with Eric recently, man. I'm helping him move one of his books right now.
Yeah.
But I remember Eric used to have, to me, he had the poppin' Facebook groups, man. I was like, damn, this dude got mad groups. They have so many people in there. So
yeah.
crazy.
Well, that's the thing too now. Facebook is huge with comics. I mean, there's so many comic groups out there.
First of all, I don't know if you know the half, because in the statue community, bro, everybody's got a group.
I was gonna say I don't. Like I'm not into I wish I was. I wish I made enough money to be into statues like some people, because statues are expensive, man.
So I used to think that too. I used to go into my shop and I remember seeing the Galactus maquette, and I used to be like, $800. How the hell can anybody buy that shit? Like it blew my mind. But again, that was like 2013, you know, and we grew from there. But see, you could buy all these statues. All you got to do is sell all the slabs you got, and boom.
But see, I'm more of a comic collector, so I'm like, but I could have such a fine comic for that price. So let me go get me an old comic. You know what I mean?
I don't know what it is, but I like the fact that you're a reader first. You know, I guess because that's kind of how I am. I like to read them, and everything comes from reading the material. You know what I mean?
Definitely. And like, I mean, I started obviously with the superheroes and things like that, but what really got me fascinated in older books was like older pulps, which were like the comics before the comics. They were more written, less art, and they were on like old, really crappy paper, hence the name pulps. But that and like really obscure sci-fi and like horror and things like that, because that always, the comics code.
Yeah, but pre-code
really fascinated me. I was like, oh, they're banning things, man. Who did what? I want to find out.
Why is it banned? Right? We need to know. What were they? What were they talking about?
Absolutely. I was like, what you guys banning? What's going on?
Got to be good.
And I was like, yeah, it was pretty gruesome stuff, man. I guess I understand why they banned some of it. But like, yeah, man, a lot of the golden age horror and stuff like that, pre-code, obviously. There's some gruesome stuff in those issues.
There's a good little market for people that collect that stuff too, man.
Ooh, there's a huge market there. And you know what I've seen more now than ever is investors, like groups of investors who will throw in like $10,000 each, and they'll go in and they'll buy a high grade Fantastic Four #1.
Yeah.
They'll throw it in the bank vault, and then they'll open it up in 30 years and split the profits. And like, there are a lot of people with money looking to like, you know, diversify their assets, and I feel like a lot of them are reaching out to comics.
Yeah, I think Dennis said that he's partners on a Tech 27 with a couple people or something.
Yeah. See, that's what I'm saying. And I'd never heard of that before a few years ago. So I mean, there's a lot of money in the industry right now. And grading is crazy. Everybody's grading everything.
So that's a good segue. And I was kind of holding off on this, but that's really what I want to talk to most about. So, you know what's funny? Have you ever, you know, obviously you bought off eBay, you've seen eBay listing of raw books. It's like an unwritten rule that if you sell a raw book on eBay, you have to write, "I'm not a professional grader." Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah, absolutely. All of it. Reading is subjective.
Definitely subjective. Now, being that you worked, because you don't work at CBCS anymore, well, we could talk about that a little bit, but you don't work there anymore because they moved, they relocated and you stayed. Correct.
Yeah, they moved to Dallas.
But are you now a professional grader?
Well, I guess technically right now I'm not, because I'm not getting paid for it.
But if you were while you were working for them, you were a professional grader.
That is correct. Yes.
So all your eBay listings could have said that, and you would have been totally legit.
No, I do. Like when I list books on eBay, I won't be like, I'm a professional grader, I know everything. But I will.
I'm just joking.
I did grade professionally for a grading company that was somewhat reputable. You know what I mean? So like, I do grade with the best interest.
Listen,
of the customer.
CBCS is definitely them or CGC. I mean, that's the only two in the game. There's nothing else. I mean, I know that CBCS, they're newer. Did they ever get a census up on their website?
Not yet.
So they need a census, and their books sell for a little bit less comparative to CGC, but they're reputable. That's the most important thing, unlike PGX or these other Vault or whatever the hell, right?
Well, and part of the reason that CBCS was so reputable is because Steve Borak, who is the president, worked as the head grader for CGC for several years. So, of course, he had a following of people who absolutely trusted him, and he's a genuine good-hearted guy. So
I always hear good things about him. I mean, I think his name is really what drives the CBCS reputation, right?
I 100% agree. I really don't think that CBCS would have had as much of an edge as they did without him.
Oh yeah, they came out of nowhere and they were just some nobodies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I remember when CBCS came around, I was like, okay. Even I was like, I'm not going to trust a company that just came out of the blue.
Right, exactly.
But I did my research on them. And eventually, after the fact, I was like, okay, I see that they're actually a real competition to CGC. And that's all that they really wanted from the beginning.
Did you ever spend time on the CGC forums?
Oh, yeah. I still do. I'm still on there.
I cruise it every now and then. But yeah, I remember when CBCS first came out, and it was like, you can't even mention CBCS on these forums, right? It's like
their name. They call him Voldy.
Voldemort.
Voldemort or Company X or something or the other guys. They call him that all the time.
So before we get into the grading thing, so when you were at Heroes Haven was doing it. They were one of the shops like Torpedo Comics that hits the cons, that gets what do they call it? Signings. They get artists to come through. They are CGC. They were CGC facilitators, and they would get you the sketch covers. And Pete Cabanero was a hustler. I used to see him on Facebook and all that shit. I'm like, yo, dude is out there grinding right now. So, but rolling with him, it was really you and him were doing a lot of that, right?
Yeah, I mean, we had a small team of guys. We had Mike Shiano was in there too, and we had a shipping guy named Chris. He also did the web store, and then Adam really held up the storefront. But yeah, I mean, it was, as far as shows go, Pete and I just really cranked them out, man. We just went on like a basic U.S. world tour of comics. It was the dopest thing I've ever done.
Shout outs, if I don't say his name, he's gonna get all butthurt. Shout out to my man Gudo, my man T.
Oh damn. That's
Bay.
I love it. That's Bay.
And shout out to the Jassos, my man Julian and Lupe, because they always say they don't watch the shows, but somehow next day they're like, damn, you didn't even shout us out yesterday. Like, how did you know? You don't even watch. Anyway, shout out to the money team. But is that so? When you're on the road, you're hitting all the cons. Is that how you ended up getting a relationship with CBCS?
Sort of. We facilitated for CGC through Heroes Haven, and it was very exclusive. We were CGC all the way, all day. No other competitor even came into our thoughts. Mm-hmm. And then Pete started pressing. He started doing his own pressing. And
he was good at it, though. He would get a lot of good results.
Yeah, he had good results, and that's people started catching on. We got a big industry, and CBCS approached him and wanted to talk with him about possibly making him their head presser for the company.
Right, I remember that.
Yes, yeah, and it was nothing was set in stone at the time, so it was not disclosed to CGC that that's what was happening. And so there was a picture posted on Facebook of Pete at the CBCS booth, and CGC saw it, so it created a lot of controversy with that.
Yeah, so I'm a little surprised that CGC feels like CBCS is a threat. I don't know. I mean, especially maybe now I could understand, but have they really slowed up? I'm sure they still got more books than they could even handle. You know what I mean?
I don't think CGC is worried as far as CBCS is concerned. I mean, I'm sure that they have upped their game because competition is healthy. Competition keeps you on top. It keeps your company running afloat, keeps it where it should be. And it really helps the big industries listen to the customers because they are going to ultimately have a choice at the end of the day. Before CBCS, there was no choice. It was CGC or nothing.
Yeah.
So, when that happens, you can kind of maybe lose track of customer service a bit. And so I really think CBCS stepping into the industry only heightened the competition, heightened the grading. You know what I mean? And
yeah, think about it. Didn't CGC come out with their newer slabs after CBCS came on the scene?
They did. They did. I believe that was 2016.
Those new slabs are dope, man. We just saw one today. So I don't. You said you've caught the show a couple times. You said, right?
What was that?
You said you've seen some of the videos that we do, right?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
So Manimal, who I do the live shows with, he just got his X-Men 1. We've been doing live comic auctions and selling his books.
Yeah.
And we raised up the money, and that shit was looking pretty as hell, and that new slab, and all that shit. So anyway, so you work for Heroes Haven. You guys are hitting the road. You're doing the conventions. You're meeting a lot of creators. I'm sure I saw you with Frank Miller one time.
Yeah, so we did private signings with Frank Miller and Stan Lee and Klaus Janson.
Stan Lee too. I forgot about that. So what is that like? Because you're the type to geek out, right? You're not going to play it cool.
So cool. It was so cool. Like, I mean, that was the first time I had met Stan. I'd never. Okay, I'm only 26, so in terms of the comic industry, I'm fresh face, very new. And Stan was older by the time I was going to conventions, and by the time I was going to conventions, he was $150 a signature and a 2-hour line. And I was like, I'm gonna go dig through some long boxes. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Yeah, for real.
I respect you, but I'm not gonna stand in line. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
But so that was the first time that I had gotten to meet Stan, and it was really neat because at the time, actually, and there's a lot of controversy around, Max Anderson, who used to be his handler and now he's not.
Right.
We did the signings through him. So we got to meet up with him at MegaCon 2016 in Orlando and do a private signing with him in his hotel room. And that was cool. But he was groggy. I mean, I think at that time he was like 93, something like that. So he was an older guy, you know what I mean? And I was just starstruck. I was like, "Oh, Mr. Stanley." Actually, it's a funny story. You're not supposed to talk to him because he loses focus on signing.
Right. You started writing your name instead of his name or some shit.
No, I just started talking to him about his breakfast, and like he was signing one of our customers, Amazing Spider-Man 50s, first Kingpin red cover.
Right.
And instead of writing his name, he wrote Spidey, like on it. And it was funny. It was kind of sad because he looked up and he was like, "I'm so sorry, I wrote Spidey instead of Stan Lee." And we were like, "Oh, that's cool, man. He'll be stoked about it." Because, those remarks go for like a ridiculous amount of money. I thought it was a neat,
Yeah, I heard something like Excelsior. It would be $2,000 to get him to write Excelsior or some shit.
Yeah, I've seen I've seen people go to him and request sketches, which I think is hilarious because he was never an artist.
Well, there's that infamous one that looks like a cockroach, right, instead of a spider.
Yeah, dude, they're just stick figure. Like he'll draw a stick figure for him, and he's like, "That'll be $1,000." Oh, okay, you got him to draw you a stick figure. Cool.
So that's cool, man. So even when I go to the cons, right, and I always want to get like interviews and stuff for like footage, but I don't know and it's not that it's starstruck. It just feels mad awkward to like run up on someone and ask them if they want to do an interview on camera and stuff. But
you could just run up with the camera in the face and they're like, "Hey, man." I see people do it all the time, though. I guess people are probably used to it by now. I mean,
I guess you would think so, right?
Yeah, with the fame, and a lot of these artists, I mean, first of all, they're just humans, and they're actually really approachable people. Like, I guess Stan is a bit of a different picture because he's like the biggest guy right now.
Yeah, he's the biggest name.
There's a lot of security around him. He's worth a lot of money, things like that. But for the most part, all these guys they're just people, and they're nerds too. At the end of the day, like they're nerds, so it's so cool to connect with them. You know what I mean?
That's awesome. So that's cool. So you get to meet these creators, and then so let's talk about. You said you applied for CBCS. How did that happen? How did you get the job there?
Okay, well, I was doing the signature series, facilitating for CGC for Heroes Haven at the time, and like I mentioned before, a little bit of drama had gone down. CGC didn't want to work with Pete anymore in Heroes Haven.
Right.
And that was kind of the bridge that I was standing on financially as I was employed, because that's what I handled. I handled everything as far as that goes. So I knew his connections with CBCS because he was accepted as the head presser at the time, and he did press for them for a few months. So naturally, I was like, "Hey, this would be the next step for me. Do you think you can get me an interview?"
Nice.
And he did. So he set me up with Steve Ricketts, who is actually now their head presser. And I interviewed, and I met with Steve Borak and Wes Steffen. We went out to lunch, talked about some things, and they hired me on the spot. So
that's awesome, man.
It was
so you know what? I kind of jumped the gun. I wanted to ask you. So that's you mentioned meeting Stan at like 93, and he was a little groggy back then. So how did you feel in the last couple of years and all that's come out with him? I don't know if you want to touch on that or what.
I mean, everybody's got an opinion on it, I think. And it has been obviously very controversial with his new handler. I want to say his name is Kia or something.
Kia. Yeah.
He's got a car name. And here's the thing. Stan's an old guy, and from what I saw when I had the signing with him, he was tired. Like, he's 93, and I think that he would go out because he wanted to do these signings. But what I think would happen is he wants to do those signings. He wants to do like maybe 45 minutes to an hour, and then ends up getting pushed to do these 3-hour things, kind of feels guilty because there's fans lined up.
Right.
So I think he kind of got pushed into and influenced into being overworked as much as he did.
Gotcha.
Which I don't agree with.
So he wants to do it. He wants to be there for the fans, but it's just like one thing leads to another. It's kind of like, we do our live shows and they go sometimes for like 6 hours. But it's like you look at like 150 people in the chat and you're like, damn, how you just going to leave when everybody's here? But
it's like it's a loyalty to the fans, but I guess depending on what you need as far as your health is concerned, it can be an unhealthy
for sure
loyalty.
I think most of us were like, yeah, man, it's time to hang it up. Like, you did enough, bro. Like, you can chill.
Oh, for sure, sure. I mean, that man's given us decades of himself. You know what I mean? And he's still out there doing it. So, but yeah, cool. I mean, when I heard that. I mean, he's been rumored to being retired for the past, 6 years or something. Because I think the MegaCon we had a signing with him at, they were saying that was the last time he was going to be on the East Coast.
Hold on. I'm not comparing myself to Stanley. The chat's going in on me. I'm just saying.
Just like him, though.
Just saying. All right. Anyway, so you get the job at CBCS. Were you good at grading comics prior to that? Like, what?
I mean, well. I didn't know not even half of what I know now. So looking back, I'd be like, no, I was an idiot.
Yeah.
But I mean, I had used the Overstreet grading guides, and I'd kind of stick to them. But it's difficult because that's something that you really learn after years and years of just grading every day and handing it to somebody who knows what they're doing, and they're like, no, this is this grade for this reason. And you're like, okay. So you kind of build up. It's an experience thing.
Gotcha.
But I was decent at it. I mean, obviously, if I really sucked at it, I feel like they wouldn't have hired me at all. I noticed that I had graded consistently lower, and I guess that's because I was used to selling. So I would always grade books more conservatively, just to ensure that my buyer was happy and satisfied. You know what I mean?
Right, for sure. I feel like that in the same way. I'm always going to go on the low end just to be on the safe side.
Definitely. And but it wasn't hard because when I graded for them, when I interviewed, they had me grade a few books, and it was I was consistently a grade lower. But the key is that I was consistent. That's so they saw that was something that you can obviously
So wow, so during the interview process, they have you grade books.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool, man.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the way it goes. But
I mean, that sounds smart to me. Now, do they give you different eras, or is it modern or older books? What do they give you?
They really just gave me a random stack of books. I don't think there were too many moderns in there because I had spoken with them previously and said that I was more into vintage, and they had modern people at the time, and I think they were looking for more vintage. So they did quiz me with more vintage books, but it was just a random stack of bronze, silver, gold, and there was a few with restoration in there, things like that. You know what I mean?
So okay, so did you pass the test and spot the restoration?
There was one that I missed. I did miss one spot of color touch on one of the books, but for the most part, I think there may have been 2 or 3 of them in there. So I caught 2 of them because
cool.
And like I said, that's something that unless you have the experience of doing that every day, it's hard to read out of a book a description and then apply it, visually. So restoration. So so you mentioned something to me that people think that
CGC and CBCS's guidelines are some big dark secret, but it's really not. Like the way that they grade and what they look for. And
Yeah, I mean, their grading standards are pretty much on par, if not just slightly off from Overstreet. What I would say, in my opinion. I mean, their standards are pretty consistent with the market. Granted, at the time, I guess that they kind of created CGC kind of created their own grading standards for the purpose of of course their company and what they would do, and they didn't publish it, so people would kind of be like, oh, it's a deep dark secret about
right.
books, their standards. But throughout the years, as Overstreet would publish their updated grading guides, you'd notice it would be more on par with the grading company.
Gotcha.
So it kind of created its own, grading system in itself. But Steve Borak really had a lot to do with the grading standard that we know today. And so I think that had a huge role in like why people go to CBCS.
Is there anything that CBCS and CGC do different, like as far as things they let get away, things that one is more strict on that you know of? Is that something?
I can't speak too much to that, except for CGC's qualified grade. Man, I hate that thing. I'm sorry, but I hate that qualified grade. Because what it is basically it's saying this book appears at this grade, but it's not. You know what I mean?
So what is it?
Oh, well, their qualified grade is basically
No, I mean I know what it is, but I'm saying if it looks like this but it's not, then what is it?
That's what I'm saying. So like you can get a qualified grade. Say you take a modern book and rip out a page, you can submit it to CGC and get a 9.8 qualified, and it'll say on the label, 9th page torn out, incomplete. So to me, that's a 0.5 all day.
Right.
I don't know why you'd even put it. You know what I mean? Like,
so CBCS doesn't have a qualified; they just 0.5 it.
Correct. I mean, I guess what you could say is similar is that they have the check mark.
Oh yeah.
Which is to say, hey, this book appears better than the grade suggests.
That's kind of
I like that. Because that's a little less, differential from what CGC does, in my opinion. Because I don't want to see an 8.0 on an incomplete book. That's just me.
Yeah.
And the other huge difference is, of course, the verified signature program.
Which I think the verified signature thing is a great, a great service for somebody who's passed away, for a Jack Kirby sig, for whoever, right? But when I see like McFarlane verifieds, I'm like, is it that hard to just get one witness? You know what I mean?
Well, he only does signings through CGC.
Well, but that was a bad example. Let's say like whoever, you know what I'm saying? Like a J. Scott Campbell sig or a Scotty Young sig verified. I'm like, come on, man.
Here's the thing why I think it's cool is because I guess collectors out there who may not be big on like signature series, things like that, who just go to a convention, they may not know that you have to go get a witness from.
They don't know. Yeah.
To get your book signed. And usually, because I've seen that happen so many times before. And when that happens, CGC is basically like, sorry, you're on your own.
Yeah, that's true.
Then, at least CBCS offers a program where they can be like, okay, yes, this book was actually signed by this person. You know what I mean? So I guess if it's more of a sentimental thing, it's for yourself. I guess,
yeah, that's true. If you got it signed, maybe you got it signed 10 years ago, and and now whatever.
Yeah, I mean, for any reason, and I agree. Like, if you have the option to get the book witnessed by CGC, go for it. As far as resale and like personal collection go, I would do that all day long. But I do understand why people would use the BSP program.
What about the art, the slabs? The CGC still doesn't have something like that, do they?
They don't. I can't speak specifically on that. I know they do have a no grade label, but I believe that is only for pages, things like that.
That's not for like that's not for like
signature series type things. But I can't say for certain because I'm not positive. But
a couple people asking about the Beckett thing, right? And so CBCS was purchased by Beckett, right?
That is correct, in October of 2017.
And if you don't know who Beckett is, they are like the leading name in grading sports cars, right?
Yes, they've been around for a very long time. They actually kind of have what Overstreet has in the comic industry, Beckett's has in the sports collectibles industry. They had the first grading guide, if I'm not mistaken.
So Johnny Dakota is asking, did CBCS lose a lot of graders because of the move? And I know the answer, but I'll let you field it.
They didn't. Actually, 7 out of the 8 graders went. Everyone but me.
So you're the only one that didn't go.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the only one who didn't go as far as graders go. They did lose a lot of other staff, but as far as the graders go, the team that's grading the books now is essentially the exact same team that was grading it before.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
they're missing out a little bit, but you know.
He also asked, and I don't know that you would even know this because you're not with them anymore. If so Ford Jarelli's saying Beckett's not number one. What is it? PSA is another one, or there's
PSA.
A couple grading.
Yeah, and there's some other ones, I think.
Yeah, I know all about it. So anyway, so what's it called? What was I saying? So they were asking, did they get backed up because of the move? But I don't know that you would even know that or not.
Definitely. I mean, 100%. I can't speak too much on it because I don't know what I can and can't say as far as details go in that nature. But we had I don't know if you guys know, we had Hurricane Irma down here in Florida. That we were a little bit behind in production anyway before that hurricane hit. But when that hurricane hit, it really threw us off a spiral.
Yeah.
And then of course with the move, because you have to realize that sure, the move just happened in June, but the merger of the two companies has been happening since October of 2017.
Yeah.
So that really put a halt in things. I mean, they have to redo everything. They got to figure out, what they're doing with this company that they just acquired, things like that, decide whether to move or not,
So is Steve still with CBCS?
Yes. Yeah. He's, I know that he was partial owner. I am not positive if he is partial owner now, but I do know that he is still the head grader and president of CBCS. But I believe he's an executive of Beckett's and therefore Eli Global, who owns Beckett's.
So I remember when the news first came out, and a lot of people, I was on the CGC forums because those guys are like the older crew. I think that they have a lot of wisdom in that forum.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of people felt like it was going to be a really good look for CBCS. It was going to put a lot of money behind them. But I feel like, has anything really changed yet? I mean, it's still.
From my viewpopoint.
Yeah, you changed for you, but.
For the company in regards.
Okay.
From my viewpoint, no.
I didn't think so.
I think a big corporation coming in and acquiring a company always is supposed to and hopefully does open up more opportunities, more doors. I know that Beckett's wanted to expand into other countries and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it's on their list of priorities. I don't know how high. I know that when I was there last, the 2 biggest things that they were working on was a census and magazine. So they could finally.
Oh yeah, because you still can't get a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1 by them, huh?
That is correct.
That's crazy.
But you know what? It's really interesting because the plastic molds that that we put the books in, those cost around $45,000 each to create.
Mold.
So it's a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
And that's for the mold, for a plastic company to then send you those molds.
Beckett needs to foot the bill. Get that thing made.
And like I said, I have 7 out of the 8 graders went, and all of those guys I became very, very close with over the time that I worked with CBCS. So my heart's with them. You know what I mean? I certainly do hope that their wildest dreams come true and they do take over the world. But you know what I mean?
No, of course you wish them nothing but the best. I feel you.
Absolutely.
So when you get what's the process when somebody? So a lot of my viewers come from the statue community, from the omnibus collected edition community. So, me and you, I think we started in the raw book, the slab community, I would say, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I get a lot of questions. How do you send your books in? Really novice questions, right? So, how do you send them in? How much does it cost? Things like that. But I don't know where I was going with that. But what I was going to ask you is when you send in a book, from my understanding, it goes through a series of graders before the final grade is determined. Is that true, or?
That is correct. I can't speak too much to the process because I don't know what I can and cannot say. I don't know if it's, I don't know if that's considered intellectual property or not. But any book that does get submitted goes through what we call pre-graders. And what the pre-graders do is they enter the notes on the book, make sure that the issue is spelled correctly, the number is correct, count the pages, grade the book, check for restoration, things of that nature.
Gotcha.
Assign it a grade, and then it moves on then to finalized, which is when the finalizers, who were Wes Steffen and Steve Borak, and Daniel Ertl as well, he was the finalizer for Moderns, they would then go and finalize those grades before they'd go on to slab.
So
each book was usually at least seen by at least 2, if not 3 graders before a grade was decided upon.
So real quick, shout out to Big E's from the NY Warriors, because Steve Borak, what's his name, Borak or Brock?
Borak.
So I think he spelled his name. So Steve was on his show recently. I think I caught a little bit of it on New York Warriors. Shout out Miss Hustle, Bill the Bull Gates, G-Zilla, Chris M. Chris M saying, how many people are in that company? So we know they got 7 graders, and they have like 3 head graders, you said, or is that part of the 7?
At CBCS, we had 8 graders total.
8 total. Okay, then they got shipping people, I'm sure, and like other departments.
Yeah, we had different departments. We had roughly 8 people in slab, about 4 people in receiving, 2 people in shipping, and then 1 in billing.
So not a huge company.
No, it was about 30 people. I mean, it was a small family. You know what I mean? So everybody knew each other. We didn't really have a huge turnover, so a lot of the people who were there have been there for a while.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So really what interests me more is the actual grading of comics, right? So we kind of talked a little bit before, but like no matter what arrow, no matter what tier, you have the same checklist for every kind of book. You don't get a stack of moderns and say, just look at the dings and that's it. Like everything has to go through a resto check.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the only difference is that obviously restoration and things of that nature are less common in modern books, as you would probably hope. But it's there. I can tell you. I can't tell you how many spots of color touch I've seen on modern books, like fresh off the printer. So
what are we doing? I mean, why even do that?
Mm-hmm.
So what I know of checking for restoration, I know that you can spot color touch because it bleeds through the back of the cover. Isn't that like the main way to detect?
Amateur color touch does.
Oh,
Professional color touch, if used with acrylic, does not always bleed.
Okay.
So it's more difficult to detect. And really, it just takes a training of the eye. I remember when I first got to CBCS and they were showing me how to spot and look for restoration and things of that nature. It was difficult for me because, I really had to just like spend like 20 minutes staring at each tick on the spine, just to make sure. Wow. But after a while, you do pick it up. You pick it up so much to the point that you can pick up a book in a bag and board and be like, that's color touch. You know what I mean? That's a piece added. It just doesn't look right after a while. So
what are like the main restorations? Color touch, and what about like glue and seals and things of that nature?
Yeah, absolutely. We considered tear seals and glue to be conservation, so it wasn't quite restoration. The difference is that restoration is anything that's done to the book to
fix it, right? Like make it better, or
better the grade and better the optics of the book, regardless of whether it's good for the book or not. Conservation is more like your
preventative
the book, preserving it type of thing. You know what I mean?
But wasn't there something with CGC that they were lenient on glue for Golden Age, but they would mark off or call it restoration for Silver Age?
And that's one thing that I've always been curious about, because as far as I have always known, CGC does have a conserved label.
They do.
Like they're less likely to use it for some reason, because I've always been curious about that, what their exact standards are as opposed to what type of small amount of glue on spine gets a purple label and what gets a conserved label. But they are, they're pretty, I feel like they're more apt to throw the purple label of death on it.
Yeah. PLOD, yeah. So, that's one thing I do like about CBCS Restored. Like, at a glance, you can't even tell it's a restored book. The label is like the same. It just has some more notes on it, right?
Yeah. They changed the labels. They've had like 3 generations of labels. And so the newer ones are a little bit better at, I guess the restored word is more bold, so you can see it a bit better.
Still, the labels, I never liked any of the labels, and I still feel like they haven't got the one that's better than CGC yet. Like, what's it gonna take, man?
I don't know. I honestly, as far as their labels go, I liked the first gen the most of all 3 labels that they've had. My friend and my coworker came up with the Rivets idea for the 2nd generation labels, and as much as I love him, I hate those labels so much.
Yeah, they only lasted for a little bit.
They did, which I feel like is best. I didn't like the look of them, but I mean, I'm okay with the labels that they have now. I can see why they chose them. They're a little bit, more clear cut, precise, not too flashy. I didn't like.
Yeah. We're gonna have to see a 4th generation, man. Is that so? You see me? I'm very judging by how the label looks. I'm picky. I like the CGC label. CGC had 3 labels, and all of them look good, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I worked for CBCS, but and that's the cool thing because I'm a collector. So at the end of the day, I can take a step back and be like, okay, but as a collector, what do I like and what don't I like? And I've always loved CGC's labels personally.
Yeah, for sure.
I got a boatload of them.
Let's field some questions in the chat. So 4Comics is in the chat. He asked he asked a 2-part question. He said, "Do you know who's grading your book when it gets? Do you know whose books you're grading when you get the book on your desk, and how do they keep it anonymous? Like, do they give you a stack of books and say, hey, these are Gems books, knock yourself out?"
Okay. Here's the thing with grading, and I can't speak for everybody, but for myself personally, as far as the graders go, we didn't go up and pick up a book that said, these are Gem Mints books, you know what I mean? It wasn't anything like that. But if we wanted to, we could have access to who graded your books. However, I never cared. I mean, you know what I mean? It was a job for me, so I try to stay as biased as I could on it. Personally, I can't speak for anyone else, of course. However,
so that's like saying you work at a bank. Don't you just steal hundreds of dollars out of the register? But it's your job. You're not really trying to lose your job, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I never came across a book that I was like, oh, hey, this is my friend's book. Let me grade it better. You know what I mean? Because I don't. At the end of the day, I'm trying to do a service. And really, for me, I'm trying to, benefit myself and build up my expertise too. So I graded it fairly and accurately as I could.
Very, very interesting though. So okay, so I got less of a controversial question. Dan Bull says, how long did you take to grade one comic?
That totally depends.
Okay.
Golden Age, Silver Age books, older books with more defects, any restoration, they take longer to grade. A modern book, it's very easy to count the pages. If you're basically, looking at a few spine stress, it's very simple to come up with a grade. With older books, you've got pieces missing, you've got, rust on the staples, you've got detached pages, you have tears, you got to go through and make sure that the pages aren't married, that all the pages are consistent in page quality. There's so much more extensive, what I like to call detective work.
Yeah.
Older books.
Chris M says, would you eat Doritos while working?
No. I mean, I would if I could, but I couldn't. I mean, I guess they never said specifically. They never came out and said you can't eat Doritos while grading. But I took it as an unwritten rule.
Of course. So you know what? So see, Mad 291 is asking a good question. How do I know if a book is worth being graded? So that's an interesting thing because I feel like people send in tons and tons of brand new modern books by the fucking boatload, and it causes so much of a high turnaround time for these grading companies, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. We were ahead. We were consistently almost always ahead in vintage than we were in modern. Modern had most of the backlogs because there were a lot of modern submissions, whether they were exclusive variants or SIG series, things like that. We had a lot of modern submissions.
What do you think about that? What do you think is slab worthy, or do you think if that's what you collect, do whatever you want?
I mean, at the end of the day, to me, it's simple math. If the value of the book and the grade that I think it is plus the cost, minus the cost of grading, is going to warrant me a better grade. Say I look up, I have a 9.8 Secret Heroes, you know what I mean? I go on eBay, I look up the raw sales. The raw sales are $60 for 9.8, right?
Right.
I go and I look up the graded sales. Sales for graded books are $250.
Right.
Figure out the difference. Is it worth the cost of grading to have that book and have that resale value?
Right. That's a really good answer, right? How much does it cost to ship your book, get it graded, get it shipped back, and how much is it worth if you were to sell it in a 9.8 and a 9.6? Sometimes your book is worth more raw depending on what grade it hits. So
definitely. And I think with older books, I think it might be a little bit more important because I feel like there are a lot of people that are a lot more hesitant to buy older books raw out there, since there are grading companies who do the restoration checks and things like that. Because you can't ever know unless you have the book in your hand and you know what you're looking for. And a lot of people, that's why grading companies exist. So with older books, I feel like, same thing. You look at the raw sales, you look at the graded sales. If it's worth it, do it. I feel like 90% of the time for the past 5 years, it's almost always worth it because the price of graded books are crazy right now.
yeah.
Yeah, they're just insane.
So the Venom 616, we already kind of touched on the red label certified slab thing. I think we all agreed it was a good thing. And my thoughts are it's worth it more for somebody who it's hard to get their signature, like a Jack Kirby or somebody deceased.
Definitely.
But Sarah had a good point. Like a lot of people don't know, and they get something signed at a con, and then they want to mail it in a year later, and they didn't know. I had a guy from work actually. He actually showed me these raw books that were signed, and he's like, "Jem, I want to buy these." And I'm like, all right, but just know that you can never get them graded because it's going to get a green label CGC. And he was like, oh, I didn't know that. It has a certificate of occupancy. And I'm like, bro, shit don't matter.
Exactly.
You know what else? Somebody asked me in the Geminites group on our Facebook group. Yeah, I got to add you to that group. That's why I asked if you was on Facebook still.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, they asked me if you have a verified signature CBCS and you send it to CGC, will they honor the SIG? I'm like, hell nah, they're not going to honor shit. They're going to treat it like a brand new raw book they've never seen before. And that's it.
However, the reverse is correct. CBCS will honor any and all yellow CGC labels, as long as they're still in either the slab or, the inner well. Winners are still sealed.
So check this out. So for me, and I don't know if you could tell, but I think the grading of comic books is super interesting. I think the different tiers and ages of books and the different things that can happen. Like I know a modern book can have resto, but 9 times out of 10, brand new modern books are going to get dinged for like spine ticks, color breaking creases, or little dents and pressing, things that are pressable, things are not pressable. And then as you get older, you start to worry about, does it have all the pages? Is it married pages? Is it restoration? So kind of something I want to tease to the viewers. Sarah mentioned, wanting to start her own YouTube channel. So I kind of jumped in. I said, well, hold up. How about you get your feet wet and do some stuff for this channel? Because I would love to have like a little segment like grading a modern book, grading a Copper Age book, a Bronze Age book, a Silver Age book, and kind of like have like a real close up and what do you look for and what would this mark off? Like what would this defect hurt? How would it affect the grade and things like that nature? So,
yeah, definitely.
And that's something that you said you'd be interested in, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I had planned on it for a while, trying to start my own YouTube video or my own YouTube channel to do the same thing because, I think people like to lead on that the practice of grading is some deep, dark secret only kept in the vaults of these grading companies. And, what I was taught at CBCS was no secret. You know what I mean? It was just how they graded. And I think it would be more than helpful. And there aren't that many YouTube videos out there that kind of go over in depth a bit about grading. Not just for the modern collector, not for the new collector who's like, hey, here's how you bag and board a book.
Right.
But like more for, this defect in combination with this defect would bring to this grade, or this is what you need to look for. Because a lot of people don't think about, if the centerfold is detached from one staple, things of that nature, these affect grades, And I feel like a lot of people don't open their books anymore. Like,
so how much does the interior affect the grade? And I guess it would depend on the age of the book and what could happen. A lot?
I mean, if first of all, it's got to be there. So that's a huge, that plays a big role in it. But it really does. I mean, if you have a coupon cutout, if you have a small tear on a page, things of that nature, staples, detached centerfolds, those count towards grades.
So I think we can get a dope series of videos from you, man, just like on these different things. Now, there is a deep, dark secret in comics. It's how to press a book. That's the secret that nobody wants to let out.
That is definitely true. That is definitely true.
Nobody wants to give out that. And then you hear things, people saying, oh, spray it with water. I'm like, what? That's crazy, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had kind of, because, I obviously worked with Pete while he was pressing, and I would kind of get curious about those things, and I'd ask a bunch of questions.
So, and I got somebody asking right now, what is book pressing? So some of my guys don't know. So basically, pressing is something where you use like a cold iron press or a heat press, which is like a big clamp. And what people use it for, like silk screening shirts, it could be used for and shit like that.
Yeah.
And it's a process that's used to basically flatten out a book and smooth out any imperfections that don't break the color. So if you have a ding, it can flatten it out. But if that ding breaks the color, it really ain't gonna do shit but make it smooth. It's still gonna get marked off. Whereas a non-color breaking ding that gets pressed out will not get marked off. Nobody would know it was there.
Correct. And especially water stained books and books with staining. Even if it's not going to affect the grade a whole lot because those stains are obviously still there, the aesthetic of the book can be affected so much that it can definitely have an effect on the grade. And that's a lot of what like the check mark is too with CBCS, because I guess what Borak had told me personally is it kind of means check the notes, like see why this book didn't hit this grade.
Oh, so it could possibly be better.
Full defect. Yeah, and that's also why CBCS made graders notes available to their consumers for free.
Free off top. That was a smart move.
Yeah.
What was CGC going to do with the $5? Like, are you really making money off the $5 graders notes?
It depends on the tier. So $5 is the cheapest. It can go up to like I want to say like $20 or something like that.
So everybody likes to make fun of me because I haven't seen a lot of pop culture, like popular movies. Like I never saw The Goonies, but I watched it the other day. And everybody's saying, I wonder if Sarah's seen The Goonies. I guarantee she's seen The Goonies. Now, Sarah said she's only 26 years old.
Yeah.
Have you seen The Goonies?
Of course. I grew up in The Goonies, dude.
Where the hell was I at when this shit was going?
Booby traps. What?
So many booby traps in that movie.
Booby traps. I love that movie. Was it the Truffle Shuffle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Truffle Shuffle. I just heard something. I thought my phone was going.
That movie was like a beacon of hope to me as a child. I was like, you can still find buried treasure. I'm like, no.
You're making me look really bad right now, but it's okay. No, it's all good. So Wilson Fisk has said this twice. PGX has graders notes on the back of the slabs now. Hey, they can put whatever the fuck they want on the back of their slabs because they just make it up half the time anyway.
I mean, that's kind of cool, I guess. I mean, like, it's not cool. I mean, it's PGX, so, like, who really cares? But, like, it's a cool concept. Like,
Yeah, that's a good concept if it was coming from a reputable company. But anyway.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
All right, so anyway, we want to get Sarah. Now I put Comic Book Nerd Girl because that's your Instagram handle. Do you still go off that or what?
Yeah. I use that for everything, pretty much. By everything, I just mean Instagram. And it's my eBay account too.
Okay, cool. So I definitely want to get you to have like a segment on the show. Like my thoughts are like, okay, here's me grading a modern book, and then we might have to send you a book if you don't have you probably have raw everything. You still have like a bunch of single issues or no?
I pretty much sleep on comic books.
Okay, so you're good.
Yeah.
So you might not have a golden age.
Of them, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I figure you could at least do all the tiers, and then there was something else I was thinking of, but I'm sure we could stretch it out to be a nice little thing. And then once you get comfortable with it, you want to do your own channel, I would definitely support you. And we got to get you in the Gemini's group because we got a Facebook group. We got like 1,000 members in there, and we're growing pretty big, so we could make sure we help promote you as well.
Yeah, and like I mean, I just kind of want to know what viewers would want to see too. I mean, obviously, like if anybody wants to comment and say what they would like to see as far as that's concerned in those videos, like definitely let me know.
I think we definitely have a lot of novice collectors that are coming from other hobbies within the comic book realm. So I think we need to go from very novice kind of stuff all the way up to the advanced stuff. Like I know you said bagging and boarding, but I don't know. It wouldn't be a bad video. You know what I'm saying? Because there's a lot of people.
There are people who don't know how to do it still.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what else would be dope? Like, how do you prepare a bag and board to cut out a square for a signature, and they do it with the painter's tape and all that crap, you know?
Yeah. That stuff's easy. I mean, yeah, definitely simple stuff like that. And I mean, I feel like it'd help a lot of people out.
Yeah, even the process on how do you send your books in, like, you know, I think that would be a good look for you, because what I like to look for is stuff that I'm not currently doing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not doing anything with single issues. So I got Manimal. He has his weekly poll videos, and you know, you're with the grading and all that stuff. So, all right, cool. So, you know, throwing that out there, we'll get something going.
Yeah, that was my idea, because I just kind of wanted to do it like a YouTube channel with videos about what I didn't know. Because like in the time that I worked with CBCS, I was like, oh, duh. You know what I mean? Like I learned so much in such a short period of time. I was like, dude, people would ask me these questions, you know what I mean, over and over again, and be like, I had no idea. And I'm like, man, I should do a YouTube channel and just
just give them the link. Like, how do you do that? Like, boom, here's the link. Just watch the video.
You know what I mean? Why not? Help a ton of collectors out.
So a couple quick questions before we go, because we feel like we're kind of ran out of stuff to talk about. Somebody asked, like, what was the most expensive book that you graded working at CBCS?
Okay, so like within the first week of me getting there, we got 4 books in, and they were a Captain America 1, Tech 27, an Action 1, and a Batman 1.
Wow.
So I didn't technically grade those, but I got to play with them. So, like I got to thumb through them, and I was
yeah, that's cool, man. I mean, it doesn't really get much bigger than that.
No, it was like $250,000 for the book sitting on the table. I was
the first time I've ever seen those books in person was just recently at San Diego Comic-Con.
Metropolis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so somebody else asked how many Action 1s came through CBCS that you saw since you were there?
I saw 2.
2?
I saw 2. Yep. I saw both of them were restored. I technically saw 2.5. Because we had like pieces from one that came in and just disintegrated basically all over the table. So we sent them back to the customer in pieces because we couldn't grade it. But so technically 2.5. But yeah.
So J-Rox is asking about what's your channel name, but you haven't set up the YouTube yet, have you?
I mean, I have a YouTube channel. It's the same name as my username. It's Comic Book Nerd Girl.
But a 0 for the O, right? For the first O?
I think it's a 0. Yeah. Yeah, that happened because I had an Instagram account, and then I got locked out of my Instagram account.
So you can go sub her up.
Start a new Instagram account.
You can go subscribe to her now, and then you'll be a day one when she finally starts doing videos on her own channel.
I have like thrown up a couple like videos over the years, but so there's some like random things on there.
We gotta check it out. What about some Jared Holdham's asking about any Captain America 1s that have come through?
Oh yeah, definitely. That was I mean, I maybe saw 7 or 8 in my time working there.
Wow. So Cap 1 is more common to see than an Action 1.
Definitely. And I feel like part of that too is that when you're dealing with Action 1s, and again, CBCS still is second ranked in the grading industry. I feel like with books like that, you're going to go to the people who have been there longer. You're probably going to go to CGC.
But see, I would go with the resto book to CBCS, I would think, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I really I loved how well we detailed restoration. That was like one of the biggest things with me, because I noticed we would get a lot of CGC books in that would have restoration listed on the label, but we would find more. And that's like mini detective work to me. It's like Sherlock Holmes. Like, because it's really hard to explain without people having background knowledge on it, but it's basically just mini detective work on comic books all day long, like a dream.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, so this is a good question from Johnny Dakota. Have you ever graded a book a Gem Mint 10?
I have. Yeah. The lenticular covers
Yeah.
from DC. A lot of those came out Gem 10s. Yep.
So you're looking at this shit like, holy shit, this is a 10. This shit has got 90-degree angles on every freaking corner. Like,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I consider myself to be a very conservative grader. I think I will always go a little bit lower. That's just how I kind of lean. So, and I didn't grade a whole ton of moderns. The moderns that I would grade were more Bronze Age moderns, you know what I mean? Because that's still pre or post 1976. But of the moderns I did grade, I'd get a few lenticulars in there. I graded 199 and 110 in the 2 years that I was there.
what would you
I
say?
was like on that thing with like a magnifying
Like,
glass.
hold on, before I put a 10 and get fired, and they look at me like, are you serious?
No, it was
What,
perfect.
what's the most common book that you've seen come through since you were there?
Um,
Got to be New Muse 98, ASM 300,
BA12, Batman.
BA12.
Oh my god, I don't know if it was like a warehouse find or this dude just been collecting freaking BA12s for the past 30 years. But I had an
Isn't
order.
that your boy Jason? What's his face? Gonzo.
Gonzo? Yeah, right. I know, probably. No, his thing's House of Secrets 92. He being all up on those. He's got like 45 of them. He sleeps on them.
Okay.
Gotcha. Yeah, I got like an order of like 70 Batman Adventures 12s.
Holy
and
shit!
I spent the entire day grading Batman Adventure 12s.
So Natua Fajita, they must be in rad. They asked, I don't know if you are able to answer this. Are you going to apply at CGC?
I am. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that is something that needs to be secret. Hopefully, they'll accept me. But it was something that I wasn't sure if I wanted to do. And then naturally, with the move of CBCS to Texas, I was like, I miss my job, man. And I do, because I love grading books. I love hanging out with like-minded people who can teach me more about what I don't know as far as these things go. And of course, the natural choice was to head on down to Sarasota and see if they needed any help. So,
well, they would be crazy not to hire you. So I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. I think they'd be crazy too.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a flip of a coin. But thank you. Yeah. So that is my next step.
So somebody's asking, because I said we were going to wrap it up soon, so I put in there, to any last questions. So we got a few questions coming in, if you don't mind.
No.
So someone says they're new to grading. Is it worth it to buy a second printing, even though it's a 9.8? So let me feel this, and then you could jump in, right?
I was gonna say, okay, go on.
I think back in the day, second printings were looked at as reprints, and they were worthless. But now we realize that sometimes those second prints, third prints are even more rare than the first print, like Man of Steel 18s and certain books that are just less common in the second print. So I think it is worth it. It would depend on the book, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally depends on the book. A lot of like, what is it? New Mutants 87.
Yeah, that's not. So it's not worthless, but it's not. That's one that's not worth as much as the original.
I always say, do your homework, do your research. If you see these books going for, more than the cost of grading and shipping, then go for it. Have at it. If there's a profit to be turned there, then absolutely, there's no reason not to.
It's not. It's whether it's worthless would depend on what's the cost to get it graded and what's it selling for, right? I mean, that's the.
I mean, if it's a $12 book as a graded 9.8, then no, you know what I mean. Don't sell it. Like, don't send it out to get graded. You know what I mean?
It's fun. So Wilson Fisk he's asking me a question, and it's funny because he says, "Yo, Jem, you said you don't want to get back into collecting comics like CGC books and such, but is there anything that would pull you back in?" I'm a sucker for hype books. Like, all of a sudden, I want a Lethal Protector 1 and a 9.8. When I had multiple ones, there were $50 books. Now, all of a sudden, because Venom is out in the limelight, I'm like, damn, I want the black manufactured error in a 9.8. Like, well, why do I want that? Just because I get caught up in the hype.
Man, it's demand, supply and demand.
It is, but no, I did it twice where I got out of slabs and got back in and realized, man, that's not what I want to collect.
Yeah, definitely.
What else do we got here? So, so my boy Dick Ryder says, What's
Okay.
Sarah's holy grail book?
Mass Comics #1,
I have
or
no idea what that is.
a Jumbo 10, Jumbo Comics #10, and a nice high grade.
You like them old books, man?
Yeah, I really, really do. Mass Comics #1 is Holyoke Publishing, and it was 1945. It's an L.B. Cole cover, and it's a brilliant L.B. Cole cover. And he is so popular right now. I think there was a trend in like 2004 where L.B. Cole was like the hot commodity. And now, like 14 years later, he's back on the market, and his books are just flying. I can't afford them. I probably won't be able to get one for another like 10 years. I'm hoping everybody just forgets about him. So drop the name.
Mad291 says, "Why can't we get our Omnis graded?" That's gonna be a tough ass plastic.
They'll just break right through any encapsulation that like.
But CGC does do trade paperbacks though, don't they?
They do, and they do magazines. But I mean, if any of you guys out there have ever submitted magazines, those deep dish magazines, like the big ones, the big Playboys or Sports Illustrated,
right?
Sometimes the weight of the magazine is too much for the skeleton of the encapsulating shell, and it will just break right through. So they're just too much.
All right, so I guess we're winding down. I mean, we got 104 viewers, but you know what? We're gonna end it on a high note. I think we had a really good show. It's kind of cool to see, how when we met and we kind of are doing our own thing, but I have kind of become successful in what we do, and
definitely,
and to see that we'll team up on something. I hope we do get that together, and we'll get some videos going on the channel.
Heck yeah,
that'll be dope
for having me.
For sure. So I guess we're going to sign it off. Thank you, Sarah, for coming through. Thank you for everyone in the chat. You got any last words for these guys?
No.
No?
No, I'm just kidding. No, I mean, hey, thank you so much for having me. And hopefully, like I said, like you mentioned, we're going to do those segments, and, I'll put up some video. Once I learn how to use a computer, I'm really technologically stupid. But, like, once I can figure that out, I'm going to get some videos going. Hopefully, we'll get something going here.
Yeah, I'm not worried about. I'm just worried about the aesthetics. Give me the raw footage. I'll chop it up. It's easy, and I just want it to look aesthetically pleasing. So we'll work on that together.
Well.
All right, y'all. So we're gonna end the stream. Thanks for coming through. Peace.
Thanks, guys.